Good evening, members. Welcome to the Audit Committee this evening. Also welcome to officers and our auditors from BDO. Some are here physically and we've also got some on the Teams meeting or Zoom. Just to say that when the BDO auditors are making their presentation online, can I just ask members to ensure that they keep the mics off during that presentation, just so that they can they don't get feedback. That would be great. Okay, we'll start with item 1, apologies for absence. And are there any substitutions?
None received, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Item 2, to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of December 2023. Members happy to accept the minutes? Thank you, Alison. Put them forward, seconded by Ruth Strong. All those happy? Yeah. Thank you. Item 3, any declarations of interest from members? None? Okay, thank you. So we'll move to item 4, the Local Code of Corporate Governance. Is this you, Fran? Okay.
Thank you. So this report is presented to Audit Committee every year in March. The Code of Corporate Governance, our local Code of Corporate Governance, is a key part of our governance framework and supports the Council's annual governance statement. The code itself is based on the SIPFA and SOLIS framework, which was originally created in 2007 and updated in April 2016. The framework provides a set of 7 core principles for good governance, principles A to G. The code is reviewed annually by senior leadership team and heads of service, and any proposed changes following work that's been conducted through the year or proposed for the following year are added to the code. And you can see in the appendices that the changes to the Code of Governance for 24-25 are shown as tracked changes, so they're shown in red throughout that document, so they're easy to identify. On page 11 of your agenda pack, there's a bullet-pointed list of just a summary, really, of some of the work that's been undertaken in the 2023-24 year, which has now been updated in the Code of Governance, and a paragraph setting out just some of the work to be carried out in 24-25. Now, those bullet points are not listed under the particular headings. You can see that within the code itself. But just to reflect on the scale, I suppose, and some of the work that's been undertaken in the last year. There was a new style Gedling plan that was approved last year to run until 2027. A new member code of conduct was adopted last year, following consultation and work from a member working group. There's been the establishment of the member development working group, which was something that came out of peer review. There's been a reviewed and updated code of practice for gifts and hospitality for both officers and members, and that went through ACSC and Standards Committee. There was a suite of member training delivered post-election in May. It seems quite a while ago now that was delivered, and quite a comprehensive programme, probably one of the most comprehensive we've ever run post-election. The creation of the digital data and ICT strategy, which is actually going forward for approval at Cabinet on the 28th of March. The creation of a new risk management strategy, which is on the agenda for consideration by this committee today. Consultation and review of our Equality and Diversity Framework and Action Plan, which is also due to go to Cabinet at the end of March. Established a staff inclusion group to support equality and diversity in the workplace. Review of our information security policy, review of business continuity plans, officer training delivered on report writing and decision making, a review of the council procedure rules, which is, has already been presented to council once and is going through for approval at the next council meeting. A staff briefing delivered on modern slavery, and the expansion of community hubs into Bestwood, the introduction of web chat, which was launched in October and is proving a really successful means of contact for our customers. The development of carbon impact assessments for use in decision making. Now, this was quite a key step forward. So we have equality impact assessments already with a lot of our key decisions. We've now developed a climate impact assessment, which it's got some some clear guidance notes for officers as to how they are to be completed, which can really look and weigh the risks around a project in terms of its carbon impact. Progression of a restructure of the organisation at management level, so a review of the level of capacity needed. A review of the council's workforce strategy, which has also been through ACSC, and also a comprehensive spreadsheet's been developed of all policies, plans and strategies in one place to make sure that they are regularly reviewed and kept up to date. And the corporate management team have been going through that recently to make sure that we are keeping up to date and all our policies remain fit for purpose. So that's just a snapshot of some of the work, and sorry to go through it line by line, but I think it's just to demonstrate some of the good work that is going on around governance. It's not always seen as perhaps the most exciting element of local government work, but it's the absolute foundation on which the rest of the exciting stuff happens, I suppose. So as you can see, the changes are shown in red, unless you have any questions. Thank you.
Do members have any questions, comments? Councillor Strong.
I'd just like to say it looks like a massive piece of work and I couldn't really add anything to it, so thank you.
Anything else? Okay, so I'm going to move the recommendations that the Local Code of Corporate Governance of 2024-25 be approved. Have I got a seconder? Yeah, Councillor Strong seconded. All those in favour? Okay, that's... We'll move on now then to item 5, the risk management strategy. Who's leading on this one? Fran, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased to be bringing this report to Audit Committee. It's essentially a new risk management framework, which we are seeking Audit Committee's recommendation to Cabinet to adopt on the 28th of March, busy Cabinet agenda. So the Council's current risks management strategy was approved by Cabinet back in October 2017. And it does provide the relevant guidance. And in terms of our legal obligations under the accounts and audit regulations, which require us to ensure we have a sound system of internal controls in place, the current strategy does provide that. However, following internal audit and discussions with our internal auditors, it's been recommended that the risk management strategy be reviewed, which is quite right because it was originally agreed in 2017. And we take another look at how we manage risk throughout the council. Also, with the help of our internal auditors, they suggested a framework which they'd seen in other authorities used as good practice, and that was the basis of which we started the review of the current risk management framework. So the framework is the kind of global term for the documents. What the framework includes is a risk management policy statement, which sets out our organisational approach to risk management and how it will be embedded into the Council's governance framework. The risk management strategy, which really sort of sets out the detail of what risk management is, why it's so important, the key legal requirements, and the roles and responsibilities of everyone within the Council, both this committee, the executive, SLT, heads of service, and it sets out in the document the roles and responsibilities around risk management for those individuals or groups. New to our risk management framework is a document called the Risk Appetite Statement, which clearly sets out and has to be agreed by Cabinet what our risk appetite is as a council, so where we sit in terms of our risk tolerance. And finally, it includes a risk management toolkit, which provides practical guidance on how risks are identified, scored and managed, as well as guidance on appropriate controls and how risks will be reported and communicated. As part of the risk management framework, the Council have done a self-assessment against the Alarm National Performance Model for Risk Management in Public Services, which sets out a sort of scoring rating of councils based on several categories. Having conducted this assessment with SLT, the Council's current risk position is at level 3, which is working. We're hoped with the new framework that this will be moving us into a higher level, level 4, which is driving within the Gedling plan period. Now, the risk appetite statement, as I've mentioned, is a new document in our risk framework. The recommendation to Cabinet is that the Council sets its current risk appetite level at moderate, tending always towards exposure to only modest level of risks in order to achieve acceptable outcomes. And it's against this fixed level that risks will be assessed and risk levels established. Now, it may be in certain circumstances that we go higher than our accepted level, but when that is the case, we need to have thorough risk assessment and set out what actions we can take to mitigate any risks arising out of that. So it's kind of the benchmark where ideally we would like to sit in our risk level. Now, obviously, it won't always sit at that level. It would be great if it could, but you know, it's the baseline against which we'd measure our risks. As I've indicated, the toolkit provides much more practical guidance, so there will still be quarterly reporting of risks to this committee. Alongside the risk framework, we have also procured an additional module on our performance management system, formerly known as Pentana, now Ideogen, which has a risk management reporting tool. So now, moving forward, when that is implemented, reporting to this committee will be like performance monitoring reports, so you'll be able to clearly see the risks tracked and how we are managing performance against those risks. So again, linking in with our kind of digital and ITCT strategy, it's a better way and a clearer way perhaps to present risks to this committee and to the wider council. Also, in terms of risk registers, so we will still have a corporate risk register. The names of the risks are, as you can see from the report in the appendix, changed slightly and hopefully are more straightforward and clear to understand what risks we're talking about. In addition to the corporate risk register, there will be a requirement for departmental risk registers, which there currently is, but also more focus on risks around projects, ICT and cyber security, and contracts, so high-level risk contracts. So there's clear risk assessment on those activities as well. So more risks encapsulated in that risk process. As I say, if the committee are happy with this document, then this will be forwarded to Cabinet for their agreement on the 28th of March. I don't know if members have any questions in relation to the framework.
Okay, Councillor Strong.
Has the form been tested and is it capable if you find you need to add things to it?
Do you mean the module or
The corporate risk register template itself?
So the template itself just sets out what our sort of risks are. So it's based on, we have a similar sort of, that's our basic risk strategy now with the risks listed on there. What we've tried to do is slightly change the wording. So there is additional risk on there now around projects, because that didn't sort of sit in the corporate risk register on its own. It was kind of captured in other risk brackets. So once, if this is agreed at Cabinet, then the next stage will be to present this to heads of service, and for each heads of service will then start to amend their departmental registers to align with this corporate document so that the trend follows through. Does that answer your question?
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, this is quite a comprehensive document. I look forward to seeing how that pans out over the next year or two, assuming I'm still on this committee. I'm just looking on sort of page 48, the different categories, and the fact that we seem to be at level 2 or 3 at the moment. And I understand the intention getting to level 4 within a year, but just looking at Appendix 1 and what is involved in each level, as it were, where and all the other demands on officer time, I'm a little concerned that we might be perhaps a tad ambitious getting to all of them to level 4 within a year, but I'm sure we'll give it our best shot.
I think the aim's more towards the end of the Gedling plan period, which would be 27. So through that plan period, because we've got lots of things that are linked to the plan that we're trying to progress through that 3-year period, and this is one of them. And yes, it's ambitious, but hopefully we'll make it.
Any other questions or comments from members? No. Okay, I'm going to move the recommendation that we recommend to Cabinet the adoption of the risk management framework at Appendix 1 to this report. Have I got a seconder? Councillor Barnes, thank you. All those in favour? Okay, pass. Brilliant. So we'll move to item 6, the recruitment of independent co-opted members. Fran, is this one yours as well?
Thank you, Chair. So this is a report that's being brought, it actually stemmed from some changes to SIPFA guidance that were actually published back in 2022. And it was an action that was included in the Code of Governance last year, but due to capacity and various other issues, it never materialised. So the SIPFA best practice indicates that to be truly effective, Audit Committee, they recommend have up to two independent co-opted members sitting on the committee. SIPFA have also sort of job descriptions as to what those members might look like and the qualifications required to fill those seats. And it would be expected that they would have sound financial and accounting experience as part of their role within the committee, given the nature of the business that this committee are considering. It's something that a lot of authorities have already adopted, and we are aware that Rushcliffe are in the process of also looking to recruit independent members onto their audit committee as well. It's a practice that we do have on other committees, so Standard Committee has two co-opted independent members sitting on that. In terms of the actual ultimate approval of this is something that full council have to agree. And in terms of timescales at the moment, what we're hoping is that if this committee agree in principle to go out to recruitment, that the interviews and shortlisting, etc., can take place with a recommendation to go to full council at the AGM when committees across the board are agreed for the following year. In terms of the process, as I say, we have carried out this process before, and actually, interestingly, the timing of this is we have, if agreed today, we have the co-opted members on audit committee that we need to recruit to. We are also, it was agreed last week that we would need to recruit 2 new independent people as part of the standards regime. And we're also looking for an additional member on our independent remuneration panel. So quite a lot of independent recruitment going out if this is agreed, and some interesting roles for the community to engage, I suppose, more with the council and the governance around the council. So in terms of process, if agreed, the application pack will go out for advertisement. Shortlisting would be done by myself in consultation with the chair, and then, if agreed, an interview panel of members drawn from this committee would interview suitable candidates and then make a recommendation to full council. Thank you.
Thank you, Fran, for that. I think on balance, I think that this is a good thing. I think it will allow for more transparency, which we're always happy to be part of, to ensure that everything that we do is transparent. And as Fran has said, this is good practice across the board. So I'm satisfied with the recommendations, but my questions were more around making sure that the interview process was robust to ensure that we're getting the right people. And that people, the people that are coming forward are genuine and have the proper skills to be able to do that role. I think that's really, really important. So I've been reassured on that, and I just wanted to make that comment. Have members got any comments or questions? Councillor Creamer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just your comments, just to say, but more specifically, I was going to ask the appropriate qualifications. I'm just guessing AT4 would be appropriate for accountancy. But just wondering, when will it be visible what qualifications we will be requiring before it goes out?
It would be part of the application pack, so we'd almost have like we have for normal usual jobs. So we'd have a sort of person spec in terms of the requirements and qualifications we would be looking for. Interestingly, other councils that were at an event Tina and I were at recently, there was they'd had some good take up from people, but generally it was ex-151 officers from different authorities who were, sort of wanting to keep their hand in, if you like. So that was quite a, yeah.
Yeah, just to come back, it was only so the committee could see what we were actually asking for, rather than just, as it says here, appropriate. So just a little bit more specific, that was all.
I can share that with the group outside the meeting if that would be helpful for me to email out the application pack.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. Councillor Cream has Fran previously answered part of my question, but the other question I wanted to ask is, given that this is a relatively new process, do we have any kind of feedback from other authorities that have appointed independent members? How easy, have they had sufficient applicants coming forward of the right standard? You mentioned former Section 151 officers, but there can't be quite enough of those to go all the way round, I would have thought. So I was just wondering if we had any feedback from other authorities.
Sometimes, again, this was just sort of talk at the training event, Tina and I. Some authorities only had one because they couldn't recruit two. And I think our view was, well, if we go out for two and we only get one, that's reasonable in terms of, at least we have that one independent member. And I think as well, I think, Tina, you'd had a conversation with Rushcliffe as well about if you've got lots of applicants and we don't have any, can we kind of buddy up a bit and see if between us we can manage to, to sort of fill the gaps. But it's not the same role, but I know recently when we've recruited co-opted members on standards, we recruited to our independent remuneration panel. We've had quite a surprising amount of applicants, more than we've had historically actually, which has been really positive, where we have actually, there's been shortlisting and then nomination for people coming forward. So there has been quite a lot more interest, I'd say, post-COVID, honestly, quite a lot more interest with people wanting to be involved in these sorts of things. So locally, I couldn't tell you exactly, but as I say, at least we can potentially speak to Rushcliffe and see, how they're getting on and, yeah.
Any other questions or comments from the members? No? Okay. Oh, Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that it sounds eminently sensible. I'm sure Cabinet will pass it, and I look forward to meeting some new colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I will move the recommendations all together, 1, 2 and 3. Have I got a seconder for that? Yeah, Councillor Strong. All those in favour then? Thank you. Okay, so we'll now move on to item 7, the Q3 risk scorecard. Are you leading on this, Tina? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So this report you will all be familiar with. We bring it to you every quarter, and it's basically so we can update you on the current level of assurance against the corporate risk register. I'm not going to go through the whole of the report, the whole 13 risks. It's quite chunky, but what I will do is talk about those risks that have moved and those risks that remain in high risk in red. So there is 13 risks in the corporate risk register. Two of them have actually increased this quarter, and I'll just go through those and tell you where they are in the pack. So the first one is on page 84 of your pack, and it's the failure to prevent budget overheat once the budget has been set. Now, the reason this risk has gone up this time is as we've progressed through the quarters and we've done our quarterly budget monitoring, we have actually had some significant overspends in some areas throughout the authority. Now, whilst we have been able to offset those overspends with additional income that we've had in through investments and underspends and vacancies in other areas, we have had to put some measures in to actually try and reduce those risks so that they overspends don't continue to occur in the fourth quarter. So that's why the risk has slightly increased. It is still quite a low risk. It is still green. If there are some additional if there are some additional overspends in quarter four, as long as they're not significant, then we think we can actually mitigate them. So the risk has increased, but it's still kind of like quite moderate, quite a green risk on that one. The second risk that has increased is on page 89 of your packs, and it's risk number 5, and it's failure to properly utilise existing ICT and react to technology changes and prevent data loss. So the reason that this risk has increased, So I'm sorry, I've got a page missing in my book. Thank you. Yes, it is. Thank you so much. Page 89. Yes, okay. Right, so this piece has actually increased from a C3 to D3, so it's only increased slightly, and the main reason that it has increased is we've had Change Network, who's a consultancy firm, come in to do some work on a risk strategy, so it's a digital and ICT risk strategy and roadmap. And what they've actually done is they've looked at ICT and digital across the whole of the authority, and they have identified some weaknesses that are currently in the ICT system. And because of that, the risk has increased slightly. They have also, as part of the work that they have done, they have produced a roadmap and set out ways that we can reduce and mitigate some of these risks. And that's something that we're going to be working on in the next year. And for those of you who was kind of like at the budget report recently, you'll know that we've put quite a significant amount of budget into next year's budget to actually deal with the roadmap and deal with the ITC strategy. Thank you. So they're the two risks have actually increased, and we've got 3 risks that do remain at red. So the first one of those is 2, and that's failure to maintain financial integrity. And if you recall, last quarter we spoke about this risk, although it's another financial one. This is one that kind of like is over the life of the financial plan. So it's red. It's likely to be red for quite a while, and the reason for this is because we just have lack of clarity over future income from government. So whilst we have presented a balanced budget, as at quarter 3 in December, we hadn't finished the budget report. We had the settlement, the indicative settlement from government, and again, it was a 1-year settlement, so the risk remains that we just don't know what our future income is going to be from government. Subsequently, we have presented the budget report to Council and to Cabinet. It has been approved. It is a balanced budget for the length of the financial, the 5 years of the financial plan. However, there is risks around the level of efficiencies that we have to achieve, and again, some assumptions on the amount of income that we'll be receiving from government. So that risk does remain at a red risk and is likely to do so for quite a while. So when Fran talked about the new risk register and the hope to kind of like get down to a moderate level of risk on most things, this is one of those that will be really difficult to reduce down, and unless we get some more clarity from government about future funding levels. The second risk that remains red is number 6, failure to protect and utilise physical assets. Now, the main reason this risk has actually increased in quarter 3 is due to some issues at Colton Forum Leisure Centre with drainage. It's being managed, but the council is currently working with the county council to mitigate the risk in the long term. In addition to that, we have quite a lot of properties that we're buying for temporary accommodation to try and deal with the demand, the increasing demand of homelessness. So we need to establish a long-term and a short-term maintenance programme to actually deal with those properties, because we are purchasing quite a few more. And then the third risk that remains in red is number 7 on the same page, and that's failure to react to changes in legislation. There's quite a few changes in legislation that are coming forward kind of like during the next couple of months. So we've had the last quarter we talked about the introduction of a mandatory qualification for building control officers. That is still an issue, but our planning colleagues, Mike Avery, the head of planning, is actually looking at ways to mitigate that and work potentially with other authorities to deal with that risk. Also, what we have is the new waste reforms that have been announced by government in October last year, and also changes to the Procurement Act, which are expected to come into force in October this year. Now, both of those, we still don't have the full details, and we're waiting for those details to come through, so it's difficult to know how we will deal with those risks fully at this point, which is, again, why that risk remains quite high. So that's all I'm going to go through on this report. Is there any questions?
Okay, members, any questions or comments on that thorough update? No? Okay, I'm going to move the recommendations that we note the progress of actions identified within the corporate risk register. Have I got a seconder? Councillor Barnes, thank you. All those in favour? Yeah. Thank you. So we'll move to item 8, the internal audit progress report. Is that you, Max? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll be presenting our progress report. So I'll run through the full report, including the executive summaries of the 2 audit reports, and then I'll stop at the end and invite any questions from members. So you'll see from page 107 of your packs and page 108 as well, we've completed 6 of the 9 reviews planned for 23-24, and there are 3 reviews that are due to come to the next committee in May with our annual opinion. Field work is underway and progressing on these, so that will be for you in May, and that will complete our plan for the year. Moving on to the first audit report, which is our community health and wellbeing report. We've provided moderate assurance over the control design and substantial over the control effectiveness, so broadly a positive opinion on this report. This is an area which is sort of critically partnership based, and the council are one part of that with the sort of healthcare providers, voluntary sectors and areas like that. But obviously it has a role within the South Notts area through the place-based partnerships, also the health and wellbeing groups that it participates in. Therefore, our review sort of focused on the council's role within these groups. So it looked at areas around sort of collecting data, how it then gets reported internally and externally to those groups to participate and contribute to the place-based objectives. It also looked at the council's internal strategy, so the leisure strategy, the playing pitch and outdoor sports strategy, because these are areas around physical wellbeing where the council will contribute to these partnerships. So you'll see from this report there was a lot of good practice identified, so critically around how KPIs are identified, how data is then collected and reported through the leisure system. So this includes areas around visits to leisure centres and things like that. Additionally, alongside that, there was a lot of good practice around the risk management area for the leisure services team, and how it then escalates risks internally to this committee through the corporate risk scorecard, but then also within the management team. So we did raise a medium finding, which really sort of contributed to that moderate control design, which was around the capital investment to some of the facilities and I guess the lack of a costed action plan. So the council had 2 external reviews of its facilities in the last year or so. This identified sort of a lot of recommendations around potential investment on sites, and so therefore our findings around sort of moving that into a costed action plan, identifying the priorities and the more immediate actions. You'll see from the management response to that finding, there's been sort of positive action so far already around sort of looking to claim external funding from Sport England and the grants they offer to contribute to those. So that sort of summarises the community health and wellbeing report. I'll move on to the generating external income report now, which we provided moderate assurance on both the control, design and effectiveness. So the scope of this review covered a few sort of different areas. So firstly, around the process for setting fees and charges and how this aligned to the council's corporate charging policy, and particularly focusing on some of the more discretionary areas. Additionally, we looked at areas around sort of claiming grants and whether there was a strategic approach to identifying and claiming grants that aligned with the Gedling plan and the council's wider objectives. And then finally, the marketing and communications activities, how they were assessed and evaluated to identify opportunities to generate further income. So the overall opinion was all really driven by the 4 medium findings that we raised in this report. Firstly, around the corporate charging policy, which remains in draft, and there was a few gaps around the roles of the heads of service in annually reviewing and setting their fees, which then obviously go through the internal approval processes. We then looked at a few different service areas, some environmental services, leisure services, and building control, and there was a few gaps identified around consistency with the corporate charging policy. So there was a few areas where we saw sort of 3 to 5% inflationary increases applied, whereas what we'd probably expect to see, and the policy certainly refers to, is a bit more work around benchmarking, market intelligence, looking at the sort of the cost base and increasing charges in line with that. And part of the, I guess, contributing factor towards that was through conversations with some staff, there were elements of a lack of clarity around sort of what market intelligence includes, how they would go about delivering that. So as part of that, we recommended sort of additional training into that area to support that process. Having said that, clearly this it's more a resource-intensive process, so it would be balanced. I think that's reflected in the management responses. It would be balanced with the resources internally to review all the fees and charges in that way. And then finally, the 4th finding around the external funding strategy. It's not been updated since 2019. And then again, there were sort of gaps around an external funding steering group to sort of guide and oversee that strategic approach. Finally, on the progress report, I'll just sort of draw your attention to the sector update and the final, I guess, article within there, which alludes to the spring budget from earlier this month. So probably one of the key headlines that came out of it was the sort of the drive towards productivity savings, and local authorities have to deliver their productivity plans to central government by July, and it's sort of targeting quite high levels of savings over the next 6 years or so. So I'll stop there and invite any questions from members at all.
Any questions or comments from members? No? No questions or comments on the report? I suppose the only... I looking through the report, just felt that the work that goes on in terms of the community health and wellbeing update obviously shows substantial, and going through those things, it just shows how well we do this kind of stuff, and that was really pleasing to read. And obviously there are always things we can improve on, which I'm sure the council will pick up on. I also noted the report as well, which I thought was quite shocking to read, towards the back of the update around the section 114 fear for almost 1 in 5 council leaders and chief executives after cashless autumn statement. And, you know, I do think the government does need to get a grip really and start considering that the lack of funding for local authorities really is having its impact. And I know that we aren't in that place as Gedling, as an authority, but potentially, you know, the more and more pressures that are piled on local authorities, it gets harder and harder without the funds to pay for the frontline services. So it was interesting to read that in the sector update. They were just my comments. So I'm happy to... have you got anything further to add, Max, or was that... So
that was all I wanted to add on the progress report.
Okay, so I'm happy to move the recommendation. Have I got a seconder for the recommendation? Yeah, Councillor Barnes. All those in favour of accepting the report? Thank you. So we'll move to item 9, the Internal Audit Plan 2024 to 2025. Will this be our... Oh, this is you as well, Max. Okay, I'll let you go forward.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll be presenting here the annual plan, which is for the committee's approval. So this is for the 24-25 operational plan, but also the 3-year strategy up to 26-27. So it's probably best to start by talking through our approach to developing the plan, because I think that probably provides a bit of context around how we arrived at the reviews we did. So our starting point, naturally, is to assess the key risks on the Council's corporate risk scorecard. So you'll see on pages 132 to 134, we've aligned each of the reviews in the plan to the corporate risk scorecard to demonstrate and show how our work is naturally aligning to that. But we also use our sort of broader knowledge and understanding of the sector risks, the key risks across other local authority clients, which we incorporate into the plan. We also met with each head of service individually, and then also CMT collectively towards the end of February to get its approval and its comments on the plan to ensure that, again, across the different services we've identified, it really gets the core of the Council's risks. So within our plan for 24-25, we've got 9 audits planned within 9 reviews planned. And if I just pick up on a few maybe more key reviews, I won't go through them all individually because I'm sure you can read and take the time to look through them separately. But to pick up on 3 key ones, so we've got environment planned and looking at the Council's carbon management strategy. I think this is probably a key area across all local authorities, and this is a review we undertake at a number of local authorities, particularly where sort of climate emergencies have been declared in recent years, and there's quite ambitious targets towards sort of net zero by 2030. So this review will look at how that's being monitored, how data is collected and used to sort of inform and support that decision making, and then also looking at actions and how that then demonstrates that commitment and meeting that objective. Secondly, I just want to pick up on budget management, and as Tina said before, this is a risk that's gone up in recent years, but remains low on the corporate risk scorecard. But again, alluding to that sort of section 114 notice, which we've seen rise in recent years, this is a key risk and a key area across the sector. So the review will look at, in practice, what's happening around budget management, what's the sort of support provided by the finance team, but then equally what are budget managers doing to monitor their budgets on a month-to-month basis, reforecast and then escalate any challenges as early as possible. And then finally, I just wanted to pick up on the procurement and contract management review. So we've included this, again, it's a key area for local authorities to get that value for money through the supply chain and purchases. Again, as Tina mentioned earlier, there's a new act coming into force later this year. So the review will pick up on the preparedness for the requirements of the new act to ensure compliance and best practice in line with that. So again, I'll stop at this stage and invite any questions, but the plan is for the committee's approval.
Are there any questions or comments from members? Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment more than a question. I mean, I'm the environment and the carbon management strategy review. I mean, that is absolutely, that policy is absolutely critical to everything this council, everything any level of government does, in my view. And so I look forward to seeing how well you think we're doing in terms of managing those issues. So I look forward to that being presented. It's Q2 of next year, so that's when it's starting, or when you're hoping to complete.
So the field work will be typically carried out through Q2. So it'd probably come to the committee. I've not got the timeline of committees in front of me, but around sort of September time, I'd expect.
Anything else from members? Okay, so I'll move the recommendations then that members approve the internal audit plan for 2024, 25, 26, 27. Oh, Councillor Greensmith.
Sorry, I just have a quick question, if that's all right,
Yeah.
Chair. The time, reading this report, I'm just a little unclear. Is the timings where it says Q3, Q2, is that when you're doing the field work, or is that when it's coming to committee?
So the timings column is principally the field work. Right. So if we took a Q3 review, it would typically come to this March committee, essentially. So yes, it's probably one committee backwards in terms of the quarters of which it comes to.
So your aim is if it's done in quarter 3, we should see it at quarter 4 committee.
That's correct, yeah.
Fine, thank you.
Okay, so thank you for that. We'll move to the recommendation. Did I have a seconder for the recommendation? Yep, Councillor Greensmith. All those in favour? Thank you. So the next item is a confidential report. So we'll have to end the live streaming shortly. So I'll just read out the legislation to move that under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public and press be excluded from the meeting during the consideration of the ensuing report on the grounds that the report involves a likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 3 and 7 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. What a tongue twister that one is. But that's okay. Is that okay? Is that seconded by the members? Yeah. Councillor Barnes, and all those in favour?